Hi, I'm Bob Mullen. I'm the founder and principal owner of Woodside Vineyards. We're standing right in the middle of our home vineyard, which is one of the 22 vineyards that we take care of, maintain around the town of Woodside. We started back in 1960 when I used to play tennis on a tennis court right on the other side of the old vineyard that was here. We bought the property in 1960, started making wine from the grapes here in 1961, and built our house and winery in 1962. 1963, we got a bonded license, so last year, in 2003, we celebrated the 40th official anniversary of Woodside Vineyards as a bonded winery. When we first moved in, the vines that were here were a mixture, an Italian mixture that most of which didn't ripen. So we were told we should plant Pinot Noir and Chardonnay as the best grapes to do well in Woodside. Unfortunately, what we planted were grapes on their own rootstock before they developed the disease-resistant rootstocks. And as a consequence, over the years, about every little disease that could happen crept in on us, and eventually we just found it necessary in 1996 to replant. And while I considered myself at a rather advanced age at that time, I'm happy to say we replanted. We get 4 times the production we were getting when we took the old vineyard out, and we were very much enjoying both the Pinot Noir and the Chardonnay that we've been making the last 3 or 4 years from these vines. And we get about 3 to 3.5 tons to an acre, which is very good for non-irrigated grapes in Woodside. When we first started out, I had a partner who had a vineyard, which we'll look at later, the La Cuesta vineyard, and then of course we had this vineyard. We started as a hobby, just making a couple hundred gallons in the small cellar that we built underneath the carport, and operated that way for about 8 or 10 years. My partner then moved to Europe, and so I had to recruit some other friends to make this their part-time hobby. And some of the friends wanted to plant grapes on their own property, or a couple of them bought property that already had grapes on it. And so just almost by evolution, every year or two we'd pick up a new vineyard and increase our production by 50 to 100 cases, depending on the size. We started to make a serious farming business out of it in 1991 when we planted actually 3 vineyards at the same time, which was more than we should have bitten off. But we had a fairly experienced crew that had been taking care of the other vineyards, and so we managed to get those 3 planted. One of them was planted for Bill Walsh, the coach of the 49ers, who at that time had just come into Woodside to take over the Stanford program. That was in 1991. He has exactly the same thing that we have here. He has a 1-acre vineyard that has about 680 vines on it, and they're both Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. But the other vineyards that we've inherited have had Zinfandel and Cabernet on them. So we actually make wines from all 4 of those grapes. And while we were told that Zin and Cab didn't mature too well in Woodside, most years they do. We have volunteers come in on Saturdays to help us pick. So we produce over 4 or 5 weekends in the fall, and as you know, it takes a week for the grapes to ferment. And so the grapes that we pick on one Saturday, we can move out the next Friday and be ready to pick and crush the following Saturday. And the Pinot Noir always comes in first, Chardonnay is second, Zinfandel is third, and Cab last. So over a period of let's say the last week in September to the first week in November, we pick almost every weekend, and the timing just works out fine. All of the vineyards we tend, we bring the grapes in and produce them here. We do make a private label for a few of the people from their own. If they're big enough, they have enough barrels, we can make a barrel or two of private label for them. And that's well, about 20% of our business now, because of a number of people that like to make have us make 20 or 30 cases for them each year. And we just added another one of those customers this year. But essentially, same winemaker, same wine. There's not really much to trade, except we will have a little vineyard difference, but not that much. Other than the ones that we private label, we tend to blend all of our vineyards together. In other words, the Chardonnay will be from our vineyard, Bill Walsh's vineyard, and 2 other smaller vineyards that have Chardonnay. The Cab comes from 4 or 5 different vineyards, and we blend those. Typically blend all of them together, except our La Cuesta, which we keep separate. So it's sort of a vineyard blending in the vineyard approach, you might say.
Well, it must call for good neighbors.
It does. It does call for good neighbors, and we've never had any problem. Everybody is very supportive of having vines and vineyards in Woodside. I don't think they'd want to have 10 wineries in town, but there's only 2 about our size and 1 smaller one, and effect on the population of Woodside. Most people don't even know we're here. I co-opted a number of my friends to make this their hobby, and that carried on through the late 80s, when in anticipation of retiring, I hired a part-time winemaker. Then when I retired in 1989, my part-time winemaker wanted to move to Sonoma, so I was able to get Brian Castle to come in 1990, and he's been with us 14 years now, and is winemaker, and I've taken him in as a part owner in the property too.
Now, do you make wine yourself still, or?
I haven't made wine since the 70s. Actually, one of the people that I co-opted to come in and help was a much better taster and winemaker than me, and so we made him winemaker for years. So Bob Mullen hasn't been winemaker at Woodside Vineyard since probably about 1978 or 79. We have events here primarily 3 times a year. We have 3 weekends in the spring, 3 weekends in the fall, and 2 weekends at Christmas time. Christmas is our barrel tasting event, which has become quite popular. And we actually sell probably about 50-60% of our wine over those 5 or 6 weekends. We sell to primarily just a Roberts store here in Woodside. They have a very nice wine store, and then do about 18 restaurants. All the restaurants in Woodside, and a few in San Mateo and Redwood City and Palo Alto.